Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. As always, if you have a story of your own that you might want to share, you can send your story to southerncannibal.com. All that being said, I hope you enjoy this one, and remember to always stay hungry. This happened very recently, and I still have bad anxiety from the experience. My name is Alan, and I'm the assistant manager of a Burger King in the UK. I was working the evening shift with two crew members, one of which I'm close friends with. Let's call him Will. So after a bit of a rush, I took a 10-minute break and had some food. I was sat in the office at the back eating a bacon cheeseburger and watching some YouTube videos on my phone. Will runs into the office, and he tells me there's a woman in the front with her friend and wants to talk to me. He told me that she ordered crispy chicken, and that her maid ordered a chicken royal, and it made them really sick. I was annoyed, as I was having a pretty good week without any complaints from customers. So I then walked out and spoke to them. She went on a rant about how they had ordered the food, and it made her sick, and they both threw up, claiming our batch of chicken was off, despite the fact that our chicken is pre-cooked, so it can't even cause food poisoning. And even if there was something wrong, it would take longer than 10 minutes for their food to be digested. She already seemed aggressive and was wasting our time, so I just gave them the refund as a way of getting rid of them. Everything was fine for the next 60 to 75 minutes. That is, until this woman came back, along with a whole load of friends. They were in band shirts and tracksuit bottoms, so I assumed they might have taken some narcotics at a gig or something. She was kicking off at me once again, basically telling me that I did the refund wrong, that I wasn't being professional, and that she hadn't even received a refund, despite the fact that it takes 3 to 5 days for money to come through anyway. She was trying to argue the case that the card number on her receipt didn't match her details, along with the fact that she worked in fast food in the past, and claimed that I was doing my job wrong. I was getting quite overwhelmed at this point. For the sake of context, I had only been the assistant manager for the past 7 or 8 months, and this was the first time I really had to even deal with such a difficult customer. I cut her off midway through a rant and essentially said, "I apologize if I did anything to make you feel unsatisfied today, and for your illness earlier in the day. From my perspective, money has been refunded, therefore I cannot do that again. If you want to speak to someone higher than me, then my boss, the restaurant manager, is in tomorrow morning. Please come in and have a chat with him. I hope you have a nice evening." Then I walked away. I couldn't deal with this woman anymore. As I walked, she then yelled, "Yes, some assistant manager you are," at the top of her voice, while then slamming her arms on the counter. I retreated into the office and gave my manager a call. Let's call him Ben. I explained the situation and what I did. He said that I handled the situation correctly, and that he would go through the CCTV in the morning and save into the system. He added that if she came back, he would ban her from the Burger King, and then send the CCTV to the police. On top of her intimidation of me for money, my boss believed that she was trying to scam us out of money through intimidation, which I can definitely believe. After the phone call, Will came back into the office. He said that she was demanding to know my full name and when I was working next, along with other personal details, which completely freaked me out. We were watching on CCTV as she was taking photos of everything, and her friends were making notes. I really don't feel like this is over. Luckily for me, a manager from another store was bringing us extra patties that we needed for the next day, and he offered me a lift home in his car. I don't live far, but it still puts me at ease, especially as this woman seemed unstable. As I said at the beginning of the video, this was very recent, and I still have bad anxiety whilst on shift. Suffice it to say, I'm looking at other management jobs as I speak. This happened a couple of years ago. I was a freshman in college, my second semester. I was kind of a loner, if I'm going to be honest with you. Still am. At the time, I had a small YouTube channel where I had made enough money that I didn't really have to work a regular job. Most college students have to work fast food or whatever, and I was really fortunate enough to not have to be one of them. Don't get me wrong, I was poor and still live with my parents, but I had made enough online that I was comfortable enough. I remember my schedule was pretty hectic this second semester. I had a really long day on Friday. Every Friday, my first class was at 7 a.m., and then my last class of the day was at 4 p.m. There were a couple of hours in between classes throughout the day, and I think I had about 4 in total. I lived too far away from my college to be able to justify driving back home, so I just kind of had to wait around on campus all day long. It was only about 4 weeks into the semester when I was really tired of this routine already. I seriously thought about dropping out one of the classes, but I figured that it was just going to be worth it if I could graduate when I planned to. At the end of this particular Friday, I was starving. I didn't really like to eat anything on campus because I just didn't really trust the staff. I know that might be bad to say, but there was this one time where I had ordered food from the cafeteria on campus and got food poisoning. They're a little infamous on campus, and there are very few people that regularly eat there. Understandably so. I just found myself waiting until I got out of class to eat, and then I can eat somewhere that I actually wanted. I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to eat after class, and I just settled on grabbing some McDonald's on the way. I was originally planning on picking some up at the drive-thru though, but I also had to really go to the bathroom by the time I got there. I just figured it would be easier to go in and order inside. I always found it difficult to order at the drive-thru anyway. I had a hard time understanding what people were saying through the microphone, so I got in there, ordered my food, and was good to go. I was just going to bring it into my car and eat as I drove home, but I noticed something weird going on. Right outside of the McDonald's, 2 people were having an argument. They looked like they were around my age, probably late high schoolers or college students themselves. I stood there for a moment, watching to see if the argument between these 2 people escalated. It did. The man started holding the girl's arms down and then pinning her against the car. I was assuming it was one of their cars. I wasn't sure if they were together or what the situation really was. I didn't really want to intervene because it was somebody else's drama and not really my problem. But I got more and more anxious about the girl's safety. This guy was a lot bigger than her. He at least had a foot of height, and it looked like he was an athlete. I stood there for a few more minutes, watching to see what was going to happen. I couldn't really hear what they were saying, but I understood that the situation was getting worse. It eventually got to a point where he opened the car door and then threw her inside. I mean, literally pushed her and flung her inside of the car. She didn't scream or anything, but it looked very startling. It made me jump a little bit, and then he went inside of the car too. They were in the back seat, and I immediately got suspicious when he closed the car door behind him. I heard the girl start screaming from inside of the car, and immediately, I knew that I had to do something. I put my McDonald's food down on the sidewalk, and then ran over to the car. I opened the car door, and he was very obviously surprised that I had done so. I saw that he was about halfway through taking off his belt. I punched him in the back, and this antagonized him. He then struggled to get out of the car so he could fight me. Thankfully, there were a few other people who had also gotten involved before me and him had a go at it. There were 2 older men in their 40s who happened to be walking into the McDonald's that then turned around and came over to help. When the other people started to get involved, he got anxious and he just got in his car and drove away. I asked the girl what had happened. She told me that she didn't even know that guy and he was just some random freak that wanted to use her for sex. She claimed that he had asked her to do it, but when she declined, he started getting really confrontational about it. I guess that was when I had noticed what was going on. This guy wasn't very smart. We were eventually able to identify him, and he was eventually charged with attempted sexual assault. This situation could have easily have been bad. If I hadn't intervened, he may have been able to do God knows what to this poor girl. It's really crazy to think that such a horrible crime was almost committed in such a public place. I mean, people are always at McDonald's. The thought that someone could even attempt such a violent and repulsive act in public like that blows my mind. The girl thanked me profusely, as I had just saved her a lot of physical and psychological torment. I told her that I didn't do anything special, and I was just doing the right thing. Wherever she is now, I really hope she's okay. Now, the story could just be me being an overprotective mom. I live in New York City, but in Queens, so there's a lot of stores by me, but also apartments. I have a baby, and she was about 18 months when this happened. She was a late walker, so it would take us a little longer to walk a short distance. I decided to get McDonald's for breakfast one morning, and I figured I would take the baby with me so my husband can shower. The McDonald's is about a 4-block walk. I ordered our food on mobile so we didn't have to wait too long, since she doesn't really like to sit still. We get to McDonald's and we enter through the side door with no issues with getting our food. As we exit the main door, I see a guy by the garbage in which my daughter almost runs into. I then apologize and we leave. He holds open the door for us. I say thank you, and we start heading home. I have the bag of food in my hands and I'm just letting my daughter run beside me. The first block we walk to go home, it has all stores, and one has a mirror door. So as my daughter and I are walking, I see the same guy behind us, but he's staring at us, like really staring. I figured he was just checking me out. I'm not conceited, but in my mind, why else would this guy be staring at us? He speeds up ahead of us, but I'm still keeping a close eye on my daughter. At the end of the block is a bar that had one of those outside sitting areas, but also had one of those construction blocks so cars don't run into it. I'm not sure what they're called. So the guy stops there and just leans against it, and he's acting like he's just looking at his phone. As soon as we pass, he starts walking right behind me, even closer. Thank God we have a Dollar General by us, and that all the employees know me and my daughter. 3 of them actually stopped to say hi. The guy started to slow down his walking from behind us. I called my husband and I told him I needed his help, and he had to come downstairs as soon as possible. But I had kind of altered my voice for him to know that something was wrong. Once the guy heard me on the phone, he had picked up his speed, and he then walked past us and went down a dead end. I didn't like him being so close to us, and who knows what he would have tried. I'm very small, at 5'2" and 130 pounds. When I was pregnant, it was September and very hot. I was about 7, almost 8 months pregnant and was very tired from work. An older guy at the McDonald's had started a conversation with me about pregnancy. I really hate talking to people, but I was just being polite. He told me how I shouldn't be eating McDonald's because the baby would be addicted. I just smiled and looked at my phone. He got his food, but I guess he hung around until I got mine. He held open the door for me and asked if I wanted a ride. I declined, but he kept persisting until I firmly said no. I saw him walk into his car and pull out to leave, but wait to see which direction I was going. He drove past me, and he waited in front of the empty lot across the street from my house. I ended up going into the Dollar General for a bit, and just hoped he would leave. If not, I would have just walked back to the McDonald's. I believe this occurred a few years ago when my folks were driving themselves, me and my siblings, on a road trip from Texas to New York to visit our family. At one point, which I believe was our first stop on the trip, we ended up at a McDonald's for either lunch or dinner. We all ordered what we wanted, and my mom's siblings and I all went to pick out a table, while my dad waited at the counter for our food. A table or two across from us, I'd noticed an old man sitting by himself. I remember the surrounding tables were empty, so he was just the first thing I noticed, and evidently would keep my attention until we left. I don't really remember if he had any food, but he was just minding his own business. A few times he had looked around and at our table, kind of just in our general direction it seemed. Eventually my dad came with the food and sat down with the rest of us. We all began to unpack our food and poke our straws into our drinks. We were making casual conversation as we did so. It was at this point we all turned our attention a few tables away to the old man, after hearing what sounded like loud muttering. He was saying something unintelligible, staring at us, his eyes as wide as could be. It no longer appeared he was looking in our general direction, but right at us, speaking what sounded like angry gibberish between gritted teeth. We all stopped talking at this point and just tried not to stare back, awkwardly taking hesitant bites of our food. After about a minute, one of us then attempted to strike up conversation again, but it was definitely hard to with this old guy making a scene that was very obviously directed at us. It seemed after a couple of minutes of this weird behavior, the old guy had quieted down some. He was still talking, but it was quiet and to himself. One of my siblings asked if they could have some ketchup for their fries. My mom didn't really want them going and getting it by themselves because she was super protective of her children, especially the younger of us. So my mom stood and walked over to where the ketchup was. The old man watched my mom go get the ketchup. The entire time, his eyes wide and staring again. He was being all quiet until she started to come back. The closer she got to our table, the louder his muttering got again. He sounded livid now and very intimidating. At that moment, I was really worried something was about to happen. Now my dad had definitely had enough. He got up and walked over to the old man's table and said, "Do we have a problem, man?" As calm but as stern as he could. I think he said some other things to him as well, but much quieter as to not attract other people. The old man was still wide-eyed, and now his arms and legs were twitching. After a solid moment, the old man just shook his head no. After my dad gave him a stern look in the eye, as to make sure the guy knew that he wasn't playing any games, he returned to our table. We were told to hurry up and finish eating because my dad just wanted to leave now. The atmosphere felt tense now. No one conversed after this point. Another 2 or 3 minutes passed and the old man started talking again, just as loud and as angry as before. My dad locked eyes with him with a very serious look on his face, which effectively quieted the guy down once more. You could tell then it was almost like he couldn't help it, and throughout the next few minutes, he was really struggling to keep his voice to himself, as well as his eyes to his own table. For some reason, it seemed as though the guy was worked up at the fact that we were sitting in the restaurant. We finished eating and began cleaning up our trash. As we did so, people were entering and exiting the establishment. A couple of people with children got their food and went to the kids' play area. The old guy started to leave. He started to walk away from his table towards the exit, and I know we all then breathed a sigh of relief. He was still muttering to himself and twitching angrily, but at least he was finally leaving us alone now. We thought that was it, but it wasn't. My dad was clearly in a bad mood now, and he was rushing us all so we could get back on the road. No one really knew what the hell that guy's problem was, or if he'd been working up to doing something violent. I know that some people just have issues, especially older folks, but what else were we to think? He had seemed just so pissed off for no apparent reason, which was aimed at us. It was alarming. My mom was hurrying us along to finish cleaning up our places at the table now, but we were all too busy watching the strange old guy leave. That was when the old guy decided to enter the children's play area. My dad had been watching him as he walked away, perhaps for this exact reason. When my father saw him enter the kids' play area, he sprang out of his chair and then sprinted over to the door of the room. I couldn't see exactly what happened, but I think the old man noticed my dad had followed him and had decided to take the exit that was inside the play area. We were finally done getting our stuff thrown away now. I think before we left, my dad made a point to mention this guy to the employees at the counter. Maybe he wouldn't have before, but why had he gone into that room? We took our leave and didn't come across that guy again. No sign of him outside anywhere. No one but me seems to even remember this incident now, or at least it's just never been brought up since, but it was definitely a scary experience. I'm not really sure if this guy was mentally unstable, on drugs, or something else. Perhaps just problems with old age. My dad doesn't usually make it his business to care either. This guy could have easily become violent though. Who knows what he would have done if my dad hadn't seen him go into the kids' play area.